Welcome, everyone. Tim, if you could just go to the slide that has the question for them. Nope.
There it is.
There we go. So hi, everyone. As you're joining, we'd love to hear what you teach. And if you want to throw in where you teach as well, that would be awesome. We can start to see who we have here. And good morning to everyone. So there's a chat at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to chat in what you teach and where you teach. All right, I'm starting to see some chats come in. Millicent, you teach everything. A lot of you teach a lot of different courses. I love it. Ooh, psychology and business. That's interesting. Yeah. You get both sides. And as you all are chatting, you might notice that if you want to change your chat to panelists and attendees, then everyone else will be able to see what you write. I think it defaults to panelists, which just comes to us. So lots of management, we've got business law, paralegal, communications, accounting. Let's see, management, math, psychology, business, computing, marketing, business applications, economics, strategic management. We're hitting all the courses. Very cool. So we will get started in just a couple minutes, but for those of you that are just joining, feel free to type in what you teach and where you teach if you'd like. We are just sharing, and again, if you see the when you go to the chat, it's panelists that your chat will come to, which is myself and my other team members here. But if you want to switch it to panelists and attendees, everyone will be able to see what you are saying.
Definitely a wide group of people on the line. That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll introduce Tim Rogers, our speaker, in a minute, but he also teaches across the business curriculum in a lot of different courses. So Tim, you'll have to share that when you start.
You bet.
And if you're wondering, you are muted when you come in and you can't see, I believe that you can't see the other attendees. So trust me, there are other people on the line. There are quite a few. We have about close to 50 on the webinar right now. So you're not alone out there. So let's see, we've got more accounting, we've got more computing, economics, risk management, political science, human resource management, more econ and risk management, and info technology. Great. Well, I think the strategies here that Tim's going to be talking about can apply to a broad range of courses. Ooh, Paula, you've got business plus religion. That's cool.
Wow. Yeah.
That must be a total switch. Business orientations. I'd love to hear more about what that class is. That sounds interesting. All right, well, we are right at time. So I'm sure we will continue to have a few people join, but I think we should go ahead and get started. Thank you all for typing in the chat what you teach. It's very fun to see the variety. So thank you, thank you. Tim, if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm Natalie King. I'm our Senior Director of Marketing at McGraw-Hill for all of the business disciplines. And I am joined today with Tim Rogers. He is a business professor at Ozarks Technical College. He's going to be your speaker today. And as you can see, he teaches a number of courses as well. So I'll let him introduce himself and kind of give you a little background in that. So Tim.
Yeah, hello, welcome. I'm Tim Rogers. Thanks for being here today. I've been teaching for about 17 years now, and as you can see on the screen, I teach a variety of different business classes across the business disciplines, even into like transportation management, operations management, and then introduction to business, which I absolutely love that class. It's kind of funny how that class has become really my favorite of all of them. But strategic management, principles of finance, things like that. It's great to be able to talk to you today. I've got some information that will be useful across all disciplines. So it's great that we have a whole variety of, from like a lady just a minute ago teaching religion and business and information technology and things like that. It's really neat to see how many fields everyone is into. So really good to be here.
Yeah, and we also have Ann Lung with us. And you might see her at the top as a panelist, and she is our product developer for many of our titles at McGraw-Hill. And she's here too, so she may be jumping in and helping with questions as well. All right. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned this earlier, but if you weren't on before, you were all on mute. So that is, if you were wondering about that, we have the chat active. You can also use the Q&A for any questions. So if you can try to put questions in the Q&A, then I can kind of monitor those, but feel free to use the chat throughout. And we will be asking a few poll questions. If you need to leave for any reason, you can just come right back in through this link and use the Q&A or chat to the panelists, and we can help. We can try to help you with any technical issues. And then we also have a recording going so that you can review later and for your colleagues that weren't able to make it. So let me know if you have any questions, but over to you, Tim.
All right. Well, once again, thanks for having me. And like Natalie said, feel free to throw your questions in the chat window. As I'm talking, I won't be able to hear you, of course, but I will monitor the chat window as we're going. And I would love to kind of follow the lead if you have additional questions about something or even just comments that I could end up dovetailing into this little presentation. That would be great. I like to view these opportunities as a way for all of us to talk to each other to figure out better ways to actually teach in the classroom or online in order to make the students learn more. After all, I mean, that's what we're doing, right? That's why we got into this. This is why we like this field of teaching. We're wanting to try to improve others, other students. And so feel free to throw those in there. Now, I know, like, you are probably like me. And when you first started teaching, you were probably really excited about being up in front of people, or at least being able to try to educate these students on things that you think will be important to them. And so that's what I was excited about when I came into this, the whole teaching world. Now, granted, uh that first like semester or two or three, they were probably really vicious for the students, because I was still learning how to teach along with the students trying to learn from me. And I really don't want to go back to those days, but we all had them. But in the beginning, there were problems in those first few semesters that did not go away in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh semester that I was teaching. And those problems were what you see on the screen here. The fact that I thought that I could just talk students into anything. I thought that if I could just explain it well enough, then they would fully understand it and be able to regurgitate that information on the exams. I used to work in the airline industry. I was like an operations supervisor, and I was also a trainer, like a corporate trainer for United Airlines. Is who I first started out with. And I was very good at explaining how to like do the reservation systems or how to do the weight and balance of the airplane. I was really good at that. And I ended up like training dozens and dozens of people. And so therefore I thought, oh, I'll just be a natural. The students will have that same interest. Well, I found that a lot of the students don't have that same interest. And they didn't really care to find that interest either. So the students rarely would read the book back in the airline industry, and they rarely would read the books in these business classes. And so I'm sure that you have experienced the same problems. The students rarely read. They're often not prepared for class. So you tell them, make sure you read chapter 5. When I see you next time, we'll talk about it. And they haven't done it. So they're rarely prepared for class. There was a lack of active learning going on. I was doing a lot of lecturing, a lot of talking, and they just were not taking it all in. And therefore, they were not doing anything on their own in order to solidify that information. So there was no active learning, and it wasn't sinking in. The other thing that I noticed was the students that I had in my classes, for the most part, were about 18 to 22 years old. And I would end up with older students every once in a while, but a lot of them were traditional age. They really did not have prior knowledge or any knowledge of the subject matter that we were talking about. And I think that I took that for granted. I think that I thought, well, I knew some of this stuff when I was 18 or 19 or 20. I bet you they do too. And I was wrong. Most of the students really did not understand anything. And so I found that I had to take it from the beginning, almost back to the basics. And the other part that I found out was I was unable to actually assess these students as I was going. There was too many of them. I had too many classes. There were too many assignments, and I was unable to figure out which students needed more help and which students didn't. And I thought I could all handle that, but it was just too much. And so I came across some research, and this is old research from Benjamin Bloom out of the University of Chicago. Some of you probably have seen this before, but this is that beginning research that he was doing in the early 1980s, where he was trying to figure out how he could make students learn more in a classroom environment. And so he did lots of research about this, and this is what he found through all the different students that he was looking at in different classroom environments and how they were learning. He found that students that were in a one-on-one, almost like a tutoring environment, like a almost like this one-to-one where you have a teacher that's directly teaching one person. Those students are able to retain or learn almost twice as much information as students that were grouped together in conventional, like one teacher for 30 students type of classroom, which is roughly what I have, at my college. Most of the classrooms are capped at about 30 to 35. And so that's what I had. So I was seeing that if I could spend a little more attention with one or two students, they were doing better. But the rest of the students were still pretty much scoring about what Benjamin Bloom found out many years ago. So he set out to try to figure out, well, how can we create this one-on-one tutorial, like personalized environment in a group setting? That's what the entire thing became, and it's still driving the debate today. How can you teach students as if they were a one-on-one environment when you have all of them in your class? That is still the problem that we see today. And so luckily for us, we have a few solutions to this. And this slide kind of sums up the whole thing. How can you personalize your experience with the students where they end up learning more? Okay, in the early to mid 1980s, the conversation changed to, I know how we can do this. We can add technology. Because prior to adding technology in that mid 1980s, the only real solution was to add more people to the classroom. If you think about it, how can you personalize a classroom environment in the 60s or 70s, or even in the early 1980s? The only real way to do that was to add more teacher aides or shrink the classrooms down to like 15 students or 10 students. But that's unrealistic because there's not enough money to go around to pay for all of these extra teachers. And so what started to happen was there's a shift where technology was advancing and education started trying to follow that technology shift. And so think back to like some of your classroom environments in the 1980s. The technology that you probably remember would be VCRs and videos, where the teacher would pop in some video and it would play for a few minutes and the audio was hard to hear. Sometimes the videotape would break. Maybe it was just poor quality all the way around, the person that made the video. So that technology didn't work very well. Think about your computer systems in the 1980s, especially the early to mid 1980s. They were pretty much DOS based. They were not user friendly. The teachers did not know how to use them. The students did not know how to use them, and they couldn't do very much. And so a lot of money was spent on adding those type of technology advancements to the classroom, and it just didn't work. And so there's quite a bit of research that shows back in the 80s and early 90s, when more and more technology was adopted in the classroom, there was almost no change. In fact, there was actually negative results. And some of that was spent on students that were exposed to too much negative media, too much negative technology that just didn't work. And so there really was a waiting game that had to take place for the technology to advance a lot more than it was, and for teachers to understand how to use it. Those two things have to go together. I mean, if you think about it today, there's lots of technology that would blow the socks off what they had in the 1980s. But you probably are aware of many instructors that don't know how to use any of it. They might think that they know how to use one thing, but they might use it incorrectly and it just doesn't work, and therefore they have negative results. So this technology has to be added in a very craftful way. And so the solutions to these problems that we have been experiencing in the classroom about students not being prepared and students having relatively little knowledge, the solutions to these problems can be summed up with these things that you see on the screen. Technology has created algorithm-based learning tools that are very good. They can really get into the student's mind of what they know and what they don't know. and they can help the student in those weak areas. And so we'll talk more about that in just a second. But that's something that just we had to wait for that with that shift in technology. Something else that technology has brought us is the use of metacognition building tools. So the idea of metacognition is knowing what you know and then knowing what you don't know. And so there are some tools that we'll look at here in a minute that that help a student understand what they don't know so they can improve it. There's also the use of generation. And what this means is the student has to do something on their own. They have to actively participate in this process. And so the word generation in education is the word given to like filling in the blank, taking the next step on their own, generating something that was not there before. And so we have some tools that use generation, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. And then finally, the ability to assess your students as you go, almost in a real-time scenario. So if the instructor knows which students have problems and what those problems are, the instructor is more capable of bringing up those students. Or even collectively, if you were to know walking into a classroom that your students did not really understand inflation, what caused it, and what will happen if inflation is allowed to occur in the economy. If you know that the students don't know that walking into the classroom, you can then alter your lecture and alter your discussions on the fly in order to bring those students up in that subject area. Being able to have that information at your fingertips is crucial in order to filling in those gaps and solving those problems. So let's look at a little bit of research that backs up what I'm talking about here. There was a large study done multiple times now at the University of Southern California at USC, and where they took large lecture halls of students. And remember, USC is difficult to get into. I believe there's quite a few celebrities out there that paid a lot of money to get their kids into USC here in the last few years. You probably remember those news reports. So USC has really high standards. So the students that are sitting in the classrooms are already at a level that a lot of our students probably are not. And so keep that in mind as you hear about this study. But what they did at USC was they took this group of students and they took multiple instructors, multiple professors out there to help with this. And they told the students, when you come back, like next week, we want you to read this particular chapter. And as you read it and study it and such, we want you to write down everything that you think would be important. Like, we want you to write down things that you believe would be on the exams, things that you believe would be so important it would lead to further study or would show up in additional chapters. And then we want you to listen to the lecture and then make your final corrections to your papers of what you believe would be important, and then turn those into us. So they did. The students went back, they read, supposedly read the information, and they listened to the lecture, and then they wrote in all their information and handed it in. Now, the professors that teach these classes, they reviewed all this information, and they found that roughly 80% of what the students wrote down on these papers was just off the mark. It either was not correct or it was not really the key pieces of information that would ever show up on an exam or lead to some other further discussion. 80%. Now remember, these are students that already had high standards, that listened to a lecture and then were told in advance, read this information. They had this instruction before they went about doing this assignment. So 80%, that's amazing. That so many students were off the target. And so what we know is the students were told to do these, to read this information and to listen intensely to the lecture. Do you think that your students are really even anywhere near that engaged? Probably not, right? This is probably how they're studying right now. They're probably have their laptop out, they're sitting on a couch and in a relaxed position. They probably have their phone out looking through Facebook or Snapchat or whatever they're doing, as they're looking at their books or trying to do their assignments, they're doing too many things at the same time. Therefore, they're not intensely engaged in the information. So what we need, and Benjamin Bloom's research from years ago, just it keeps coming back to us over and over. We need to be able to figure out what this lady on the screen or what this guy, what they really need, because you can probably guess they don't know. Right? The student, they don't even know what they know or what they don't know because they're into too many things at the same time. And that USC study proves to us that even if they are told what they should be doing, they still are coming up with the wrong information. They need this one-on-one, like apprenticeship, personalized tutorial environment in order to guide them through the information. And this is where we can step in to help with this, we as the instructors. And so I'll go ahead and take a quick pause here, and I'll let Natalie introduce some information that they would like to ask about.
All right, so I'm going to launch a poll really quick just to see what kind of how everyone is teaching. So let me launch that now. So go ahead and answer the poll. All right, I'm seeing responses come in. Thank you for answering. All right, it looks like the responses have slowed, so I'm going to go ahead and end, and I will share the results here. So it is not surprisingly, probably majority online, still a lot of face-to-face and hybrid, but and some of you said all of the above. So
that's very interesting too, because when we look at that, like the number of you on the line right now that are teaching online, 70% of you have either fully online or online classes right now, and about half are face-to-face. And so imagine the online environment caused primarily due to the pandemic, but imagine those students when they don't get to experience your lecture, when they don't get to experience the eye-to-eye contact with you, or that little feeling they get when you look at them and they think that that they didn't do the homework, right? There's always that little cringe inside you. In the online environment, they don't get a lot of that. And unless you are sending constant emails to them or something like that personally, they're not going to feel that. And that just reiterates the need for some sort of additional technology that we can use in order to stay up with these students, because there's so many of them and they could definitely get lost in the dark in an online environment. So that's really amazing to see those numbers come back. So that's really good. So let me keep moving. And a couple of you have chimed in on the chat room here. And this is great. Like one of you said, that your students, well, this is you, right? You're doing two screens at once. You're dealing with multiple classes at the same time. So you are in the same boat as a lot of the students. And then someone else said students don't know what they don't know. And that's exactly true. So we have to somehow let the students know what they don't know. And then they can improve on that. And so what we've got here is active learning solutions in order to guide the students through these assignments and through the information. They need immediate feedback to tell them that they don't know something so they can improve it. They need a way of knowing the things that they are missing, so that metacognition building tools. And they have to do some sort of active learning or generation. Now, what I do, and up on the screen, we see some slides here, and let me move through this just a little quick here so I know where I was at. But the use of this algorithm-based learning tool, and that what McGraw-Hill has is something that used to be called Learn Smart. Now it's called SmartBook, where it's all integrated into one tool. And so for those of you that have used SmartBook in any of your classes before, you understand a little bit about how it works. It's an algorithm-based learning tool where students read the book. They are then prompted to answer questions. Based on how they're answering those questions, it will then take them back into the part of the book that they need to read more about. If they are answering too many questions incorrectly, they'll be guided into those areas where they need to have more remediation. They'll be guided back to the area that they need to be brought up in. So it's almost as if you are there talking to the student and you realize that they don't understand inflation. So you kind of correct them on it, or you tell them, well, you know what, you need to read this section again and pay attention to this chart. That is what's happening in this algorithm-based learning tool called SmartBook. And so I have been assigning SmartBook modules as homework assignments, and they're preparatory assignments for my classes now for a number of years. And when I started making these as preparatory assignments, it quickly solved the problem of students not being prepared for class. Remember when we talked about the problems that we had just a few minutes ago? The major problem is the student is not prepared for class. They're not reading the book and they just don't know the information. And that always irritated me when I would tell the students, make sure you read chapter 10. I'll see you on Tuesday. When you come back on Tuesday, it's real obvious they did not read chapter 10. They didn't do anything you said. Now, think back in your classrooms, when the professor would get really mad or something about the students not being prepared, what would typically happen? They would probably say, all right, everybody shut your books, get out a piece of paper, we're taking a quiz. And there was always that fear of the pop quiz that would come up in class. And that kind of motivated me, and it motivated a few other students too. Now, the problem is, do you think that professor enjoyed giving the quiz? Probably not, because they had to come up with the quiz, they had to act like the tough guy, and then they had to grade the quiz afterwards, because people want to know how they did. So it really created more work for the professor, and it irritated the students. And so I fell into that same rut. I started doing the same thing. When I thought the students were just completely unengaged and didn't read, I would start having quizzes. And I found that it just did not work. I didn't like giving them, and the students hated taking them. And so I was scrambling to try to find some other way to make sure that they were doing their reading and doing their homework assignments. And so these SmartBook modules solve that problem almost overnight. I made them worth points. I made them worth 10 to 15 points, where it wasn't too much in case they missed a few, but it definitely wasn't just a freebie or worth so little that they thought it was a joke and they didn't do them. You have to make it worth enough points where it seems like it's important. So if you make this a preparatory assignment, they have to read through the chapter and they have to answer lots of different questions about the information. So it solves the problem of them not being prepared or reading for class. It also helps solve the problem of informing the student in their weak areas, because the algorithm that's running behind the scenes in SmartBook really is what Benjamin Bloom was looking for decades ago. It becomes that one-on-one personalized tutor, that if the student keeps missing questions about inflation, then SmartBook will keep giving them more questions about inflation until it believes that they understand it. And so the way that takes place is through metacognition. The student has to answer their confidence ranking at the bottom of the screen as they answer their questions. Based on that confidence ranking, the algorithm can predict if the student really knows it or if they're merely guessing. And if the student really knows it, well, then it's going to ease up on them on the concept of inflation in the future. But if they're merely guessing and getting it right, it can understand that also, and it will give them more questions about inflation. This is something that Benjamin Bloom probably never even dreamed of in the early 1980s, but yet we have this at our disposal. So let me tell you how I use that information. Up on your screen, you're going to see that there's like the most frequently missed questions report. And this is actually, you know, a live screen from about a year and a half ago of one of my classes. There was a Learn Smart Book module that I gave the students right before I walked into class to lecture on that chapter. And of course, you'll see this was chapter 2, Understanding Economics. Right before I walk into class, I want to know how my students are doing on those questions that appear in the Smart Book module. And we'll see, and I know this is small on your screen because we're in the Zoom environment here, but you'll see that there's a frequency of 19 times a question about perfect competition was missed by my students that I was about to talk to. So I know real quickly, in the matter of seconds, when I look at that report, I'm getting ready to walk into class. I know that I need to hit perfect competition a little bit more when I'm lecturing. So this is sometimes called just-in-time teaching. This can also be called like being able to like see the future or read the minds of your students. However you want to view this, this is how you can use this information. You can use these reports in order to change your lecture to bring up your students. And the beautiful thing about this is you can do this before they take their exams, because you're just going in to lecture on this information, and then you can alter what will happen in your classroom, and then it will bring them up. And so this is a great way to use the reports from these type of assignments in order to continue to make your classroom environment or online environment better. You can do the same with online. If you see that students are missing certain questions or certain learning objectives, you have time to send them an email out saying, hey, everybody, make sure as you read through the information that you are looking at this, this, and this. And this all happens before the exams. They have a better chance of scoring higher on them. Okay, something else.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a time check that you're about 32 minutes in.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. So, and remember, if you have more questions, feel free to throw them up in the chat room as I go. And if somehow I missed them, Natalie, interrupt me and throw that in. That would be totally fine with this.
We did just get one, actually. How do you apply this online?
I do it the exact same way as a seated environment. And so in my seated classes, when I give them that Smart Book prep assignment, and it's important that you make it a prep assignment because you want it to solve the problem of the students not reading before they get to class. So I assign that it's due at the minute that a seated student walks into a seated class. So if we have class 10 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I will make that assignment due at 10 a.m. on Tuesday over the material that we are just about to cover. Now, in an online class, you know that, of course, the schedule is just a little bit different. So I will make those Smart Book assignments due about 3 days prior. So I do an exam window that's usually 3 days long. I usually do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday exam window for my online classes. I will make those Smart Book modules due on that Thursday night. Therefore, the students have to do them before they take the exam, right? That would be key. But students, they'd probably do the homework after they took the exam. That sometimes they just don't know what they're doing. So make it due on like the Thursday night. Therefore, you have a chance to go in real fast. I mean, it doesn't take long at all. You go in, look at the information, say, oh boy, they're really messing up on monetary policy. They just don't understand it. So you have a chance to send out a quick email saying, be sure you understand monetary policy, inflation, interest rates and the money supply, and this is how it works. So you have one last chance to kind of give them that last bit of information before they go off to take the exam. So you just have to alter that time just a wee bit for an online class. But it's really not much. And somebody likes the macroecon examples. I do too. I like macroeconomics a lot. So I'm telling you, these type of solutions work for pretty much every class. Even the religion classes, right? The lady that's teaching religion, it works for that too. It's just kind of a standard educational method that's starting to morph through the advent of technology. So it's great. Okay, so moving on into this next piece. the idea of fill in the, and your mind immediately probably comes up with the word blank. And so we want students to fill in the blank. We want students to fill in the missing pieces of information. And so this is called the generation effect. Students have to actively be engaged in this. And it may be as small as filling in the blank. Now, here's another research example that I think you're going to like. There was a meta-analysis about instructors that give their PowerPoint slides to their students. And I know that there's a lot of you that do that. I will do edited versions of this. And I do edited versions of the PowerPoint slides because this is what the research is starting to show us. If you give your PowerPoint slides or worksheets or whatever you do, right? If you give the student the entire piece of information where everything is filled in, they won't pay attention to most of it. And it's not, I mean, I hate to say it's useless, but they really don't understand it. But if you were to leave out key pieces of information in your worksheets or in your PowerPoint slides, when you make them available to students or when you show them up on the screen, if you leave out key pieces of information, the student naturally starts trying to figure out what goes there. When they are trying to figure out what goes in the missing or fill in the blank, they are more engaged mentally. Therefore, students that have to fill in these pieces of information score on average 66% higher on exams and assessments than students that are given all the information. Now that is pretty amazing, right? Just think of that. All you have to do is go through your PowerPoint slides and remove a few words. Remove a few words from worksheets or anything that you're giving to the students. And it will help them become more engaged and seek after the information. And then it sticks more. And so that's something that we also see with SmartBook. We also see it with other activities that I'll talk about in a minute, such as the mini simulations or what they call the application-based activities. The students have to fill in pieces. They have to make decisions or find things, and it helps them learn the information better. Okay, and so in addition to SmartBook, and I kind of just mentioned this a minute ago, there's another type of activity, another type of a homework assignment that you can start to give students that will help them engage with the information. It causes them to fill in the missing pieces of information. And those are the mini simulations, application-based activities. These are available for a lot of different types of classes now. And so in the business discipline is what I teach in. There's, from economics to marketing to management to strategic management, intro to business law. There's lots of different ABAs, application-based activities that have been created. So if you are unfamiliar with what I'm about to show you here in a minute, I'm just encouraging you to take a look at these, because these are something that the students actually enjoy doing. For one, they're quality assignments and they are improving the learning outcomes of the students. And so
before I launch this poll, I missed a question like 2 minutes ago. The online courses that I teach do not include live seminars. Is there any way to adapt this to my courses, maybe in discussion assignments?
Sure. You could do discussion assignments. And is this in reference to the simulations?
I think it might have been before that. So when you were,
okay. If this is going back to the use of generation and the missing pieces of information, sure, you can do this in the online environment. So if you are giving the students anything, right, any sort of information in like Canvas, Blackboard, or in your Connect assignments, you can remove some of that information where the students have to search it out or find it. And it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to change the way that you teach at all, because I know we're all unique and we all get into our groove, right? We do things a certain way semester after semester. You don't have to change that, because honestly, there's no way that I'm probably going to be able to change that very easily. I do it the way I do. And I know that you do too. So just take out a few things and it'll make the student actually search after it.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to launch the poll here real quick. All right. So if you all could answer this question, have you used mini or full simulations in your classes? So I already see some things in the chat about the ABAs. It looks like some of you have used our simulations, but let's see. Responses are coming in. Thank you for answering the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share for time's sake. So it's roughly half have used them.
Yes, that's very good. So about half have and almost half haven't. And then there's a few that aren't sure. So therefore, I'm guessing that that probably means no. So you're right, it's almost a 50-50. And so it would be interesting as I'm talking about this. I've seen a couple people that are already saying, I've used these and they're going well. David is saying, I'm using these for the first time. The students are struggling because there's almost a level of complexity that would be great for the students, but they haven't seen this complexity before. And this is great because this engages the student with active learning. And so, you know, that first time that you use any of these simulations, and I experience this too, there's always a learning curve for the instructor and for the students. But it gets better and better. And the feedback on these simulations is great. And so what I'll just quickly show you lots of different disciplines that these are used for. So up on the screen, you're going to see mostly this is business that we've tailored this all to today, but there's other simulations outside of this that you can use. Now, if I'll just show you a screenshot of the simulations that are available for like introduction to business. So if you teach that type of class or you teach a different class, it'll look very similar up on the screen. And so for this class, for instance, there's accounting and finance or financial ratios. You've got international trade, economics, entrepreneurship, all these things. There are scenarios written that the student becomes the role player. The student becomes the entrepreneur, the student becomes the banker, or the student becomes the borrower. So they get to become the person that needs to make the decisions. So they're going to have to use the information that they've learned in class from you, that they've learned in the textbook or from the homework assignments. They're now going to have to apply that into a scenario, just like the word simulation. And so on the screen, you'll just see a screenshot here of a simulation that pertains to investing. And so several classes talk about investment basics, and that's what this one is talking about, that you have a certain amount of money that you have at your beginning freshman year of college, and you need to do something with this, $3,000 or $4,000. You hope to let it grow. So when you graduate here in a few years, it will be worth more. And then you'll be able to have a down payment on a house or an apartment or something that's a little bit better where you can move out of your parents' basement, which actually that parents' basement doesn't look that bad, so maybe you don't even want to move out, but you're trying to grow your money. And so this scenario is you, the student, who is trying to figure out how should I invest in order to grow the money. And so as the student moves through the simulation, they're going to have to answer questions. These questions may be right or wrong, or maybe they're partially right. So what happens is, as the student is presented the information and the question, they have a chance to make a decision. When they make a decision, they are then going to follow a path, a branch. And so it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. From years ago, and I always kind of like those. I always got like eaten by a lion in the second chapter or something like that because I made the wrong decision. Well, that can happen with these simulations also. If the student makes really bad decisions, then a lot of these will just come to an end. And it'll tell the student, you really don't understand any of this. You need to go back and review this information in order to prepare yourself. Or if the student is partially right, they may get, deeper into this. Or if they're partially right, maybe they're going to get a prorated amount of points. Every one of these is slightly different, but it calls on the student to use the information that they see on the screen and in the book to make decisions that would have a more real world outcome. And so I believe it was David a minute ago in the chat room was saying that his students are using it, they're struggling a little bit, but the information that's in here is actually really good for them. It's good for them to apply. And that's exactly how I feel about this too. These are the type of things that I wish I could craft up in my lecture so the students could answer those questions. But I can't talk it all out, in order to create the scenario right before your eyes, in order to give the chance or the student a chance to answer the questions. I almost can't do that. So this type of technology allows us to take a student and put them in a very short simulation. Most of these are anywhere from like 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, right? Anywhere in that ballpark right there. And they have a variety of outcomes. When a student plays it again, let's say you offer it, twice or something, the student might end up seeing a completely different pathway. Or maybe there's a randomized feature running in the background where a student, when the second time they play it, they'll all of a sudden be on a different pathway. So it's not the same. And it's also extremely difficult for students to cheat off from each other on these because of the branching and pathways that are involved. And so that's very good. There's lots of different simulations that exist from these application-based activities called ABAs, which are usually very short. There's also larger simulations that McGraw-Hill offers. And I can give you a personal attestment of the business strategy game. This one right here in the middle of your screen. I use this simulation in my strategic management classes. I've been using it for years. And it's a full feature, robust simulation that the students, like David said, they struggle at first. And they do. They complain a little bit at the beginning, but by the time they get to the middle of the semester and towards the end of the semester, they usually love this and it becomes their main focus. How can I beat this other person? They keep getting more revenue and more market share than me, and I don't know what I'm doing. It becomes a completely different strategy for the student as they're moving through the semester compared to not having a simulation at all. And so you can either do small simulations or full feature robust simulations in your classes, and it really elevates the amount of learning that takes place. It makes the whole class more fun and engaging. And so I see some people that are chiming in here, that saying that they've used these before, that they enjoy them. There's some other people talking about in different disciplines here that they're using these simulations in, and so that's great.
And we need to wrap up in a few minutes, so I'll let you bring it home.
All right. So the final piece here that I want to talk about, if you're looking for one final way to engage your students in something that's just a little bit more non-traditional, but yet doesn't cause you to change the way that you normally teach your class, there are some tools that you can go to where the authors of the textbooks that you're using are writing or providing articles and current information that you can use in class. And so I thought there was a picture of that up on the screen, but for instance, there is for understanding business or introduction to business, there's a website where the authors are providing articles that are very current. Sometimes every day they're putting them on there, and you can scroll through those and then use those articles in class because they correlate to the chapters and to the subject matter. So if you're about to talk about employee motivation, you just type in, motivation in this website, and it'll give you current articles that the authors of the textbooks have found that are relevant and pertain directly to the textbook. So you don't have to worry about trying to adapt them in. They're already ready to go. And they are from sources, New York Times or LA Times or CNN or whatever it might be. They are from very current sources. And so I will often go to these websites and look for this information in order to kind of spice up my class a little bit, give them more real world information that's happening. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop, my presentation and open it up for questions. If you have any final questions at all, please let me know. If there's something that you would like to know more about, I'd be happy to, assist or help in any way that I can. And you can either type those questions in or we can all see those, or Natalie can.
The question was, there's a question that I failed to answer. Are they always connected with a text, or can they be independent? The application-based activities are within the Connect product. Some of these other strategic management simulations that Tim was talking about are available separately. And we also have a separate marketing simulation that's longer. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that can be utilized separately, but I could be wrong on that, if you want to correct me.
Yeah, no, you have to use the ABAs within a Connect course.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, well, any parting words? Thank you all for attending. Any parting words, Tim?
Just the final takeaways you see on the screen. You don't have to change the way that you're teaching. Do what you do because you're probably good at it. Just add some of these other components that will help engage the students and make them learn more. And like I said at the very beginning, that's the whole point of what we're doing. There's lots of different jobs out there that pay a lot more than teaching, of course, but we are doing this in order to try to fulfill, some of our own aspirations, and to make the students learn more and just be more productive in the future. So thanks for listening. If you have any questions at all in the future, please let me know.
Tim, one person wants to know why Intro to Business has become one of your favorite classes.
Oh,
for those of you that need to run, please go ahead. We will, but go ahead and answer that question if you want.
And it's just become my favorite because you can go anywhere with it. A few weeks you're talking about economics, and a few weeks later you're talking about management, and then marketing, and then accounting and finance, and it keeps the semester rolling, and it gives you a chance to bring in information that the student will have in the future. Like, let's say, accounting information, you can bring that in earlier into the semester, knowing that we're going to talk about that here in about 6 weeks. And so it gives you a chance to tie all of business together. And I just really like it.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Thanks for joining us today. And hopefully we'll see you soon, virtually or in person.
That's right. Thanks again,
everyone.